If you know anything about Portal's development, you've probably heard of someone named Kim Swift. She was the lead designer of the first Portal and was involved with the game as far back as Oracular Drop. She also worked on a few of Valve's other games and was pretty well known at the time. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. When you play a big part on a pretty influential and well-known game like Portal, people are gonna notice you. But in 2009, she left Valve for Airtight Games. At the time, it seemed like an odd decision to leave a big company she was finding success in. It's like if Miyamoto or Aonuma or someone like that left Nintendo, it wouldn't feel right to a fan of their games. But in hindsight, I don't really blame her. Valve only had a few more years before they went radio silent on game development for a while. So, just who are Airtight Games? Oh, you know, only the people who made Dark Void, but they're also more recently known for Murdered Soul Suspect. I actually heard that game wasn't too bad, but while Kim was there, she directed a game called Quantum Conundrum that was really similar to Portal. It was a short but sweet game they released in 2013 for $15, and I remember really liking it. It wasn't as clever or inventive as the game it clearly drew inspiration from, but it was a fun time anyway. But that was years ago. I haven't really heard anyone talk about the game much since then, so I'm curious how well it holds up. In Quantum Conundrum, or physics problem for people who don't like complicated words, you play as some nameless 12-year-old kid that's visiting his Uncle Quadrangle at his giant mansion. Quadrangle also happens to be a mad scientist, so whenever he visits, he has to put up with whatever invention his uncle made that week. This time, he made this glove called the IDS that lets you change the very fabric of reality around you. Okay, it's actually shifting between dimensions, but like, what kind of weird stuff does this guy do to not even have it phase this kid? And why does his mom keep dropping him off at this place anyway, and without even checking the Quadrangle is even there? Because he's stuck in some weird pocket dimension and doesn't remember why or how he got there. So it's your job to turn the 3 generators in the mansion back on and find him while he talks to you over the god mic. That's it, really. There's also this interdimensional qual thing named Ike wandering around the place. He apparently just wandered into the mansion one day and Quadrangle just kept him. Sure, whatever. This guy can also see into multiple dimensions at once and can freely move between them, and he can teleport too? And Ike is able to eat frickin' uranium? What the hell even is this thing? Quadrangle even made cloning machines just to satisfy his nearly bottomless void of a stomach. Points for creativity, but this dude just low-key ended world hunger and doesn't even acknowledge it. That's Quantum Conundrum's weird sense of humor. I'm not really laughing very often, but just thinking about the absurdity of everything is pretty entertaining. Like, Quadrangle apparently built a time machine at some point and just wandered around with Ike. Feudal Japan took a liking to this furry, almost anthropomorphic creature, and it totally didn't influence them in any way. Or like, this nearly endless expanse of a mansion that's somehow able to fit on this cliffside. It totally ended well for that one chicken unfortunate events. You can die in this game though. Child endangerment aside, the game tells you of all the things you'll never experience now that you died at 12. It's actually kind of depressing that I'm 10 years older than this kid and I haven't experienced half this stuff either. Not having a date to the prom? I didn't even go to my prom. I spent that night recording a bad ukulele review. That wasn't a joke, that's actually true. Also, don't watch that video, or we die in a mansion. The game has plenty of subtle humor too. I like how all the books lying around are a bunch of math and science puns. Some of its humor is a little too referential in my opinion. The older I get, the more I appreciate jokes that aren't, hey, do you know this thing? Isn't that funny? It's not really a bad thing, just something that I've been personally trying to move away from, despite making 2 of these kinds of jokes in this paragraph. But that kind of feels like what Quantum Conundrum was trying to do. The Portal inspiration and similarities are obviously there, which makes more sense when you realize it was directed by one of Portal's original creators. But gameplay-wise, Quantum Conundrum is its own beast. The main thing about this game is the ability to shift between 4 dimensions, aside from just plain old regular reality. You've got the fluffy dimension where everything is 10 times lighter, the heavy dimension where everything is 10 times heavier and are immune to lasers, the slow dimension where everything is in slow motion, and the anti-gravity dimension where everything floats the ceiling. These dimensions don't alter anything about you, though. Only everything around you, and I mean everything. I love how all the environment and decorations change to suit the dimension. That's really cool. I especially love all the paintings. You have this really nice picture of Quadrangle that is completely ruined when you shift to Fluffy and see him wearing a bunny suit. And I really like how everyone's wearing these 80s metal band outfits in the heavy dimension. The best painting in the game is one of Ike with a balloon, because it's not the same joke as usual. My favorite is how the balloon just bonks his head in heavy. Slow and Anti-Gravel have the same joke for the most part though. Either everyone's impatiently looking at their watch or just floating in the air. Funny the first time, but less so when you've already seen it. You can't just swap between all four at will, though. You need to find a dimensional battery in each level and place them into a receptacle to be able to shift to it. Sometimes they'll even be limited on how many can be active at a time, making you think about how you can use your abilities. It doesn't come up very often, but it always felt like a nice change of pace when it did. Because while changing the fabric of reality doesn't sound too useful on paper, it has a ton of uses in practice. Like using Fluffy to pick up safes and switch back to normal and activate buttons, or taking a box, throwing it, and immediately shifting to Heavy to break windows, walking around lasers in slow motion like you're in the Matrix, jumping between falling platforms in slow motion like a ninja, using random objects lying around as elevators. This stuff is honestly kind of awesome. The game has some pretty nice quality of life stuff too, like how whatever you're carrying becomes transparent so you can still see in front of you, and the lack of loading screens really helps with the game's flow. From what I can tell, it does something similar to Metroid Prime, where it loads the next level in the background when you open the door to it. Even when there are loading screens, they're pretty quick on my PC. They're not too bad on PS3 either. Definitely not long enough to seriously interrupt anything. It's really nice not having to sit through a loading screen after every level. Seriously, how does something like Doom Eternal load faster than Portal 2 on my computer? The game also has a weird emphasis on platforming. Not that it's a bad thing, I just wasn't expecting it. Like maybe sometimes you'll throw a safe and slow it on time to jump on it and then jump to a nearby platform. Or you sometimes have to switch between Heavy and Fluffy to use these trampoline things. While it does take a while for the game to make use of all four dimensions, when you're switching back and forth between everything like it's nothing, it feels good. Even the platforming, which is usually annoying in first-person games, is pretty fun to pull off. Even though the game doesn't make you think outside the box very often, executing the solutions to these puzzles just feels good. That's the biggest similarity of Portal with this game. It's a puzzle game that's still fun as an action game. The levels themselves don't have a ton of replayability though, except maybe if you want to speedrun it or something. Because saying I beat this test chamber using only 2 portals is a lot cooler than saying I beat this level using only 40 shifts. Like seriously, have you seen the par on some of these levels? But to be fair, the game does have these hidden collectibles scattered around to encourage you to look through every nook and cranny, but if you don't care about that, there isn't much here for replay value. Most puzzles only have one solution and are pretty easy for the most part, so there isn't much reason to replay them unless you want to. There weren't very many points where I was at a total loss of what to do, which is fine because I enjoyed the game as a puzzle platformer. This isn't really the kind of game that gets mind-bending. Quantum Conundrum is just trying to be a fun puzzle game, which it does really well. My only real issue with the game is how often you end up waiting around sometimes. Running through stuff in slow motion is awesome, but if you mess up, you often have to wait for things to reset to try again, which is just annoying. Some of the later puzzles can be pretty finicky too, like using anti-grav to move these safes between robots. You have to time it just right, and the saves don't move that quick to begin with. It just feels awkward. The physics can get pretty wonky sometimes too. Like here, I'm trying to move this couch right side up again to properly stand on it, but it just isn't happening. The game can often use the same tropes frequently as well, like how you can grab a fluffy safe, throw it, slow it on time, then use anti-grav to go any distance you want. That's cool as hell, but it's used a lot. I kinda wish they'd make you use these dimensions in different ways more often, which it does use them in a lot of different ways, but some things like that tend to be repeated a little too much. Anti-gravity has the least amount of uses by far, mainly just moving things upward and activating ceiling switches. While it is introduced last because of that, there weren't very many points where I thought, damn, that's cool while using it. The ending is probably the biggest issue, because there kind of isn't one. After you restore power to all 3 generators, the mansion almost collapses on itself. You find the main generator where the pocket dimension is, and the game just kind of ends. After fixing the Uber IDS, which is pretty much the main generator, Quadrangle finally remembers that the pocket dimension was a failsafe, and you get stuck in the pocket dimension. So now it's up to Quadrangle to figure out how to stop the IDS from affecting the entire planet. And that's it. I figured the DLC would address the cliffhanger, but it turns out that they don't have any story. At all. Seeing as how Airtight Games went under in 2014, I doubt we'll ever know what happens next. Which is annoying, because the game didn't have the deepest story or anything, but I was curious about what happened to Quadrangle, and they just don't explain, and instead set up for a game that never got made. And the DLC is just alright. Granted, I didn't play all of it, but I did at least try out every level, and I genuinely couldn't find a single one that was worth playing. At best, it's stuff you've already seen in the main game, but at worst, it's either tedious or frustrating. I was genuinely impressed by how unfun this DLC is. Like, were these levels made by a different team? Because it's hard to believe that the DLC was made by the same people who made the fun main game. There was rarely a point where I went, ugh, do I really have to do this? But in the DLC levels, I said this at least once per stage. I was having such a bad time that I was actually skipping most levels by the second DLC pack because I really didn't want to do this stuff. The lack of story and voice acting doesn't help either. It just makes everything feel disconnected and kind of pointless. This game does go on sale for super cheap quite often, so you might as well pick up the DLC, but if you don't, you're not missing much. Not awful, but not worth the extra $6 either. I mainly just bought the DLC to support the game, and I'm not sure if that even means much nowadays, considering the now defunct developer. Which is a shame, because the main game is honestly a pretty great time. It's only about 5 hours long, but even at $15, that wasn't a big issue. And now it's even cheaper. I'm pretty sure I got the game with all the DLC off Steam for like $4. Conundrum didn't really get too much attention since not many people were really starving for this kind of game in 2013, but that's a different story for some people in 2020. So if you like Portal, you'd probably like this too. If you expect any mind-bending puzzles, you'll probably be disappointed, but you'll probably enjoy yourself just expecting a fun puzzle platformer. Kim Swift apparently works at EA now, so unless she has enough influence to convince EA to buy the rights from Square Enix, I wouldn't expect a sequel. Like, ever. This has been Flame Guy, and actually on second thought, don't do that. I don't know how they could shove microtransactions in here, but EA will find a way. Take care, and I'll see you all next mission.